External sector, the brief outlook which they have given first, what has been happening in the external sector. So the broad overview is that there were in the last 10 to 15 years, there were two major crises. One was the global financial crisis, which is a financial crisis that happened in 2008, and the other is the health crisis that happened 2019, that was COVID. Now they try to draw a relation between the two and what exactly the implications have been on the global economy as a result of these two. Now what happened right after global financial crisis, there was a severe liquidity crunch. There was a failure in the financial segment. There was a lack of liquidity in the whole global market. Now to solve for this liquidity crunch, what most of the economies did was they followed a policy of quantitative easing. Now what is the policy of quantitative easing? What happens in quantitative easing? And this is what they have related, that the policy of quantitative easing, इसका end करना मुश्किल हो गया है, इसलिए अब यहाँ problems आई हैं. We are not able to exit from the policy of quantitative easing. Most of the developed economies followed this policy of lose money. What happens in quantitative easing? Decrease in interest rate. That is it. That is a loose monetary policy. What else apart from decrease in interest rate? Buying of securities. So what is the implication of buying of securities? The money supply increases, you will have more and more printing of currency. So under quantitative easing, what the developed economy did, they started lowering the interest rate. In most of these economies, the interest rate was, and they also started printing more currency, which severely expanded the money supply, made it very cheaper to borrow money, making it interest rate zero and printing of currency. Now, for 10 years of this policy, there was no problem and we had a significant growth because economic activity was helped by the cheaper finance. So there was no problem. Now problem happened when you had this crisis of COVID-19 where you had lockdowns, and mostly COVID-19 led to supply side shocks. And the moment supply side shocks are hitting, you have a problem with loose policy, with the loose monetary policy and supply side shocks. If your money supply is increasing and your output does not increase, what could be the implication? If you have more money chasing fewer goods because supply side shocks, you will have a significant pressure of inflation. Now this is what they have drawn कि global outlook इसलिए negative है because there are significant inflationary pressures. Inflation has increased significantly, due to which the developed economies. Now what do you do for tackling inflation? They have increased the interest rate. Now increasing the interest rate would lead to a problem for emerging market economies. Why? Because from all of your emerging market economies, anyone who has invested money here, most of the foreign institutional investors who have invested in emerging market economies, they mentioned a term which is called as, or they have mentioned it, said it, risk assets. Risk assets is nothing but your investment in shares, bonds, and other financial instruments. Why they are mentioning risk assets? Because the foreign institutional investment, they come for quicker profits investing in these type of assets. So when the interest rates have increased in US, that is the developed economies, the foreign institutional investors who had invested money in the risk assets in the emerging market economy, they are now coming back. There has been an outflow of investments from the emerging economies to the developed economies. This is why your dollar has there is a significant appreciation of dollar. This is what the global outlook has been. A decade or more of quantitative easing policy, free money. The moment supply side shock hits, you have inflation. Now, how do you exit from this policy without causing a loss in growth? Inflation, increasing the interest rate. The moment you increase the interest rate, you have a reversal of the outflow, a reversal of the foreign institutional investments. The moment you have reversal, you have a problem that now your dollar is appreciated. Now, what is the problem in the emerging market economies if dollar is appreciated? Depreciation होगी currency की. So rupee is not getting weak, dollar is getting strengthened. और ये सर्वे ने भी बोला खुद. और अगली लाइन में ये लिखा है, no matter how many jokes you crack on Twitter, this is the fact. Read it the survey, he has written this line. ये लिखने के बाद ही उन्होंने आगे लिखा है because he knew he would be trolled. Impact एक ही है, ये हो चाहे वो हो. So the dollar is strengthened. The whole idea is dollar is strengthening not across rupee, but also is strengthening across all the other major currencies because of the outflow of investments from other countries to US because of the tightening monetary policy of the Fed. Depreciation. Now, what would be the impact of this depreciation? What would be the impact? They have highlighted what would be the impact of this, combining it with other problems that are still faced in the economy. The first major impact of depreciation is that your imports get costly, exports steep, but the global environment is not conducive to growth. So you'll not be able to increase the quantity. Imports have become costly and it is very difficult to reduce their reduction of quantity is difficult. See, ideally depreciation helps in reduction in quantity because costly ho jata hai. You start finding substitutes. Now this is becoming difficult right now. Now what else is the problem with depreciation? That is the major problem. What will increase? हाँ, डेफिसिट तो इसी से बढ़ जाएगा ना, क्योंकि इंपोर्ट्स हम कम नहीं कर पा रहे, एक्सपोर्ट्स हम बढ़ा नहीं पा रहे. The biggest problem is that whoever has bought in the form of dollars, their external borrowing cost has increased. This is the biggest problem, that external borrowing cost will increase, because if someone has bought $100 at rupees 60 and now the value of rupee has fallen to rupees 70, the same $100 he will have to service more. The biggest problem is people who have borrowed money from abroad, they are going to have to service the debt where they will need extra dollars because of the depreciation of rupee. This is the major problem across emerging market economies and India also, because in India the largest form of external debt, the largest component of external debt is your external commercial borrowing. So the rising cost of external commercial borrowing is one of the major problems which the economy is facing. Overall, it is said that global economy is facing a problem because you have external commercial cost has increased because of the strengthening of dollar. And this is what they have drawn a global picture, not just of India. So there is an elevated external borrowing cost, high inflation. Now, what is the reason for high inflation? Supply, not just for India also. After COVID, we have not been able to sustain the supply side shocks. Supply side shocks are still happening. There is a lot of commodity, and the supply side problems have not been just caused due to COVID, but you also have the disruption caused due to the Russia-Ukraine war. And why this is significant? Why the Russia-Ukraine war is significant? Goods. Russia and Ukraine both are suppliers of a range of commodities. Both the countries are a major supplier of range of commodities. This is why we have volatile commodity markets. There have been misalignment of the whole supply chains, first because of COVID and second because of the Russia-Ukraine war. So you have high volatility in the commodity markets, and this is the reason we are saying that it is sticky inflation. Sticky inflation means it is not going away. We are not able to reduce the pressures of inflation. We are not able to impact inflation. And why are we not able to impact inflation? What is the tool with the government or the RBI or with the central bank to control inflation? They have only one major tool, that is interest rate. And interest rate will not work on supply shocks. This is why we are saying that we are now having a sticky high inflation, because despite increasing the interest rates, the inflation is not going away because the inflation is from the supply side shocks. This is what they're talking about the whole global economy. This will not change if you do not deal with this. If you do not restore the global supply chain, there are going to be problems. On top of it, we are already seeing that there is a lot of the whole geopolitical situation where US is targeting China. And China is again, like Russia and Ukraine, a major supplier of commodities. The alignment of geopolitics is also causing a problem in supply chains across the world. And interest rates would not be able to help because interest rates cannot work on supply side. Most of the interest rate would work on what? Demand side factors. International pe interest rate kaam kar sakte hain, but not on supply side factors. They cannot restore supply through interest rates. Outlook, this is why the growth outlook is uncertain, and since you have policy tightening from US, you can have further impacts. So the global environment is not safe because of these reasons. See, all of this, whatever thing we have created here, UPSC is not going to ask you the question that what exactly is the global outlook right now. You just need to draw the relations here, why things are happening. Because questions would be centered around if the US, last year itself they asked this question, if the US is increasing the interest rate, they have a tight monetary policy, what are the implications? So you understand the terms and then you understand why it is happening. These relationships are more important because questions will be centered around this. This is why economic survey, wo khud padhne se, you can make these relations. Then further it talks about the trade in India. One ratio which they talk about is they talk about openness of trade. The economic survey affirms that trade is good for the countries. Why is trade good for the countries? Why is trade good for the country? Foreign reserves. Why do you need foreign reserves? Closed economy rakho, reserves hi nahi chahiye. For international trade. Why do you want to trade? Yahi to question hai. Question yahi hai, why trade? In the first 3-4 lines, the economic survey affirms that we are pro-trade. We want trade to happen. Trade is going to bring us growth. This is what it affirms. Now, why will trade bring up growth? What is the big easier way? Why are countries trading? This is the reason why the countries started trading. Resource allocation. Some countries have some resources and they have proficiency in using that resource. So comparative advantage over the countries. Trade will ensure you have best resource allocation. जिसके पास जो capacity है वो वही बनाएगा. So this is what we are saying. And openness of trade, it is measuring through trade is to GDP. How much trade is happening across GDP? This is openness which we are measuring through trade to GDP ratio, and it says that it has increased 46% in 2020 and first half it is 50%. That means India is pro trade. Hamara percentage trade to GDP is increasing. That means we affirm the idea that we want more trade to happen. Now another thing, it said that growth of trade happened severely after pandemic. It has given few reasons why growth of trade has happened severely after pandemic. The first thing it talks about is pent-up demand. What is pent-up demand? People had the money, but due to several external reasons, they could not spend. So that pent-up demand got released the moment the lockdown-related restrictions were removed. So this is why the pent-up demand has created a growth in trade. Appreciation of the dollar in case of United States. Appreciation of the dollar will help US how? Exports will be more. The moment you have appreciation of the dollar, you have more and more import demand coming from US. The moment appreciation happens, your imports get cheaper. So the quantity of import demand would be higher. So this is why pent-up demand combined with pent-up demand means that consumers have now more demand across the world. And on top of it, your currency is getting strong, you can import more. This is why global trade activity increased. Further, relative dynamism of the regional trade in Europe. This is a highly integrated region. So the moment lockdown would be removed, you will have more trading activity here. Europe is a highly integrated region. You have the creation of a common market, common union. So this is why inter-regional, the dynamism here. Terms of trade got effective in some large economies. What are terms of trade? Terms of trade. See, this is why meaning of the terms is important. Wahi aana paper mein. What is terms of trade? Conditions. तुक्के. See, terms of trade, अच्छा फिर favorable कैसे होंगे terms of trade? This is your terms of trade. How much of your import can be financed through your exports? Favorable means that you have more earnings on exports as compared to giving out of imports. In the external sector, the term of trade means how the price of exports, what exports you are doing, what is the price of exports as opposed to the price of imports. Favorable term of trades तब है जब आपको exports की earning ज़्यादा है. That means you can easily finance your imports. You are earning very well. And why favorable terms of trade? By increasing energy prices. If energy prices across the world are increasing, why will you have, or what countries will have better terms of trade? Those who are exporters of these energy resources, they are going to have favorable terms of trade. Unki export earnings badhengi. This is what is called as terms of trade. External sector terms of trade talks about how much exports I am earning for whatever import, or how much imports I can finance through my export earnings. This is terms of trade. See, terms of trade in external sector is comparing price of exports and imports. You can have terms of trade being measured in domestic economy. Domestic economy across sectors. Now, what exactly would be that? External sector mein we are talking about price of exports and price of imports. If I want to measure the agricultural terms of trade with respect to industry, what would be that? If I want to measure the term of trade for agriculture, and we will measure it through industry also, we are not classifying services right now. See, terms of trade here would be what exactly is the price of agriculture goods as compared to the price of industrial goods. Why this terms of trade we will want to measure in the economy? Why would we want to measure this? We want to know what exactly is the standard of life or what is the inflation which the farmer faces. Now, inflation which a farmer will face is two sides. One, inflation is the price he gets because he's a producer. And the other inflation he'll face is because he is a buyer of industrial goods. तो उसके prices में कितना improvement हो रहा है कि उसके industrial goods में कितना है. This is how we study the impact of inflation on different sectors. Consider in agriculture, your farmer is both he's producing and he's also a consumer of industrial goods. How do we know what is the impact of inflation on a farmer? Which impact would you see, as a producer or as a consumer? This is why, no, you will have to compare relatively. कि उसको प्रोड्यूसर साइड पे कितना बेनिफिट मिला इन्फ्लेशन को बिकॉज इज गेटिंग गुड प्राइस, एंड कंज्यूमर साइड पे उसका कितना नुकसान हुआ क्योंकि यहां भी प्राइस बढ़ रहे हैं. दिस इज व्हाट इज हेल्प थ्रू टर्म्स ऑफ ट्रेड. जैसे एक्सटर्नल सेक्टर में भी मेजर उनके एक्सपोर्ट्स का कितना प्राइस बढ़ा के इंपोर्ट्स प्राइस का बढ़ रहा है. दिस इज व्हाट इज फेवरेबल टर्म्स ऑफ ट्रेड कि हमारे इंपोर्ट्स का प्राइस नहीं बढ़ा ज्यादा, हमारा एक्सपोर्ट्स का बढ़ गया. वी आर मोर बेनिफिशियल, फेवरेबल टर्म्स ऑफ ट्रेड. सिमिलरली व्हेन वी मेजर द एग्रीकल्चर टर्म्स ऑफ ट्रेड, वी मेजर हाउ farmer impact was, whether his price increased or price this increased more. This is how you will understand what is the impact of inflation on this farmer. You'll have to understand the terms of trade between the two things. I am producing one thing and I am consuming one thing. Same thing on the external sector. I am producing one thing and I am consuming the other thing. So what exactly is the impact of any price rise? मेरे एक्सपोर्ट का क्या फर्क होगा और मेरे इंपोर्ट का. This is your terms of trade. You can compare any two prices across any two sectors to know the terms of trade because farmer is both a producer and a consumer. तो यहाँ पे अगर प्राइस राइज इतना नहीं हुआ बट ये सब्सटैंशियल हुआ, दैट मीन्स ही हैज अ अनफेवरेबल टर्म्स ऑफ ट्रेड कि मेरे प्रोड्यूस का इतना नहीं बढ़ा जितना मेरे जो वट एवर आई हैव टू बाय, बोथ इन टर्म्स ऑफ इनपुट्स एंड बोथ इन टर्म्स ऑफ योर कंज्यूमर गुड्स. Both if prices increase, that means unfavorable terms of trade for agriculture. Most of the times you will find unfavorable terms of trade for agriculture. इनका price ज़्यादा बढ़ता है, food का नहीं. But in certain cases you can find the opposite also. So this is how we measure the impact. This is your terms of trade. So favorable terms of trade effects in some large emerging economies due to elevated energy price. If you have elevated energy price and you are an exporter of oil and gas, you are going to have favorable terms of trade. So this is the global trade they are talking about. Then measuring the good trade, this is the report, WTO goods trade barometer. And if you notice WTO goods trade barometer, they have mentioned in the footnote, they have also explained what is this good trade barometer. This goods trade barometer is what displays the performance of trade, especially in goods, in real time. जो हमारा रिपोर्ट्स के बाद आएगा, this is what they've explained in the footnote itself. हमारा जो we are going to calculate what trade India is doing or what any other country is doing, it will happen once the trade is executed and the report will be formed 1 month, 2 months, 3 months down the line. ये real time में observe कर रहा है कि trade क्या चल रहा है. The report is of WTO. So goods trade barometer you can have is a publication or is an index of what? That is World Trade Organization. All the more important क्योंकि WTO के ज़्यादा barometer या reports हैं नहीं. Now it says that the global trade outlook turned grimmer in the second half of 2022. After pandemic, the growth rebounded for trade. Now, after the second half of 2022, you have a sad state of affairs in the trade relations. Now, what is the reason for this? One, increasing likelihood of recession and the tapering demand for consumer durables. Pent-up demand pandemic के बाद बढ़ी. Now that demand is tapering or reducing. When the demand is being reduced, also you have significant pressures of inflation. You can have threats of recession. Aggressive monetary policy tightening by several central banks, disorderly financial conditions. This is the most important thing because most of your economy is set as per they know that the money is going to come at free cost. So now they have invested in a lot of risky projects because they know money is going to be flown at very lesser cost. The moment you stop this abruptly, इसका एग्जिट बहुत मुश्किल है. इसको द मोमेंट यू स्टॉप इट अब्रप्टली यू विल हैव अ लॉट ऑफ फाइनेंशियल प्रॉब्लम्स. यू हैव सीन फेलियर ऑफ सर्टेन बैंक्स इन यूएस because they're dependent on free money. They want to finance the next debt also in free money. The moment cost of finance increases, now they will have to reevaluate the projects. In fact, the policy of QE, you can see, has a significant impact on startups in India. Now, this is something you will see witness in the next 6 months to 1 year. All of these startups, they were getting a huge amount of money from venture capitalist funds that were coming from outside, and these venture capitalist funds were taking money from the cheaper finance from the banks and financial institutions outside. तो बहुत free का पैसा 10 साल तक उठाया. This is why we had a startup boom. Same boom happened in the field of crypto. All of these booms have been made possible because free money was being distributed by banks in US and Europe. This is why you will see 2 days back also your central bank, UK central bank and also Germany, they have said that we are going to continue with QE. We are not going to stop this because they know the moment they are going to stop tightening monetary policy, you will have a problem of interest payments everywhere. Debt service nahi ho paegi. This is why you will see problem here in India. Those who have taken free money, this will face a problem. This is why you will see most of the startups facing problem क्योंकि अब उनको पैसा नहीं मिल पा रहा है बाहर से कहीं भी. We have continued supply side disruptions. Supply side disruptions because you have the Russia-Ukraine war which is still ongoing. So Russia-Ukraine, both suppliers of commodities, the supply chain disruptions are not being eased out. Now why supply side disruptions are on the rise? All the more not just because of Russia-Ukraine. The problem with most of the developed world wants to diversify away from China. This is why they've talked about shifting from global value chains to resilient value chains. They are trying to find some country to replace China. This is why all the more you have supply side disruptions, and this is something which is very difficult to solve. All the three combined, the trade outlook is not positive. And this is why towards the end, what the economic survey says, that if the growth is not increasing, अगर बाहर का ये trade का pie increase नहीं हो रहा है to this, तो हमें यहीं पे अगर हमारा ये है, तो हमें यहाँ पे ये diversify करके market share ज़्यादा capture करना है. This categorically they have mentioned, if GDP or trade or growth is not happening in the global economy to a larger figure, तब हम अपना trade नहीं बढ़ा पाएंगे. हमें यहीं पे हमें diversify करना है और market share ज़्यादा capture करना है within the same pie. This is why it is important, because growth hoti to we could have expanded trade further. But now we want to capture market share. This is why it has talked about competition with Bangladesh, Vietnam and a lot. We have to change our internal dynamics to compete so that we can diversify across products and regions. ताकि market share ज़्यादा capture कर ले. So these are the three problems faced in the global economy, especially with trade. And elevated freight charges. Any idea what exactly is the problem of freight charges? Cost of ship. Why has it increased now? So a lot of supply side disruptions. We don't have a lot of containers shortage, which is very high. That is right now in the trade. जिसकी वजह से transportation cost बहुत बढ़ गई है. India का also has caused a lot of problems in India because we have to pay a lot क्योंकि shortage बहुत ज़्यादा है containers की. So all of this leads to one problem, that you have less of trade growth, and also the future outlook is grim, not positive. Monetary policy tightening. Monetary policy tightening, you have for a lot of years, your central banks have given money for free. They have printed money and they have given money for free. And now they have increased the interest rate from 0% to 2%. So if I am a bank who has given a lot of loans, वो free आ रहे थे सब. Free की आदत, अब 2% उनको service charging हो जाएगी. That is mean these business will start facing a problem because of the monetary tightening. And the moment they have problems, your financial conditions will be disorderly. Why? Because failure इनका होने लगेगा. And this is what it has talked about in the first paragraph itself. The moment interest rate has increased, the yield on the government securities have increased world over. The moment yield increases, what will be the impact? The bond prices decrease हुए हैं, तभी yield बढ़ी है. The bond price decrease हुए. Those who are holding government securities, that means they are facing asset valuations. Asset valuation losses हो रहे हैं उनके because of the fall in their bond prices. A lot of banks and financial institutions are holding these bonds. So on their assets they are losing value. For example, something मैंने अपनी books में value लिखी हुई है 1000 rupees की. Now the interest rate has increased, the yield on the bond increases, the bond price falls, the value of the bond is now rupees 800. तो मेरे asset की value कम हो रही है. Startup failing because yes, this funding, ये loans तो इन्होंने startups नहीं लिया है ना, सब पैसे आगे, वो free था सब. This is why they'll face a problem. See, startups are not failing because पैसे कम है, startups are failing because उनके पास idea भी नहीं है. Main reason ये है कि free का पैसा जब तक मिलता रहा तो वो चलते गए. They expanded like anything. Now they are realizing कि अब तो business model ढूंढना पड़ेगा. तभी वो fail हो रहे हैं, ऐसे नहीं. और वो इसलिए चल गए सारे. This is why you see a lot of startup bubbles and now everyone is facing a problem. Every startup is facing a problem. Very few have gained. Everyone is facing problems. क्योंकि अब next level of funding कहाँ से आएगी? Everything is, the whole genesis is because the world, right now growth is not coming because the world has not been able to find a solution after 2008 financial crisis. Financial crisis के repercussions अब तक चल रहे हैं. ये supply side shocks आए तो the repercussions have been very immediate. Otherwise this had to happen because a lot of free money was flowing in a lot of things. There were number of asset bubbles that got created. A startup is also sometimes called as an asset bubble also. कुछ था नहीं idea, बस पैसे डालते गए क्योंकि लगा कुछ बनेगा. This is not politics. बनेगा वहाँ. Another thing which they have mentioned that we are opening up the global trade. World 56.5 is to GDP. India is 45.3. So we are catching up to the world. This figure is important. You can have a statement that India has more than the world average. India has lesser than the world average on trade openness. This is trade openness. Trade as a percentage of GDP. World average is 56.5. India is 45.3. This is the share in world merchandise exports. See again, these type of data, what they help in, sometimes they can help you in writing an introduction in mains. In some of your answers on external performance, though the probability of that question is less because कोई term mention नहीं है external sector. But still, if you have a question on openness in trade or something, you can quote any of these figures that India has a dominant share in merchandise exports or service exports. These figures can be used. Otherwise, for prelims, what is important is the trend. You need to notice what the trend is happening, import performance, or rank in world trade, or even export performance. Both these performances, you should have an idea of what trend happened in the last 3 years. Export in the share in world merchandise exports, it decreased then increased. So there's no consistent trend, decreasing then increasing. Same thing with commercial services. Now this is something which India has a expertise in. So 3.5 to 4 and it has remained stagnant to 4. So these things, the trend is more important as opposed to the figures themselves. If you want to remember, you can remember 1 or 2 figures which data you can use in answers in mains to give more specificity to your answer. Because you should know idea कि trade openness अगर कहीं quote कर रहे हैं, we should tell that what exactly is India's share in export or imports. Otherwise, the trend here is important. Then what exactly is the performance in Indian exports? In the financial year 2022, this is an important thing because India, for the first time, this is the highest level of merchandise exports we have done. In the financial year 22, that is 21 to 22, India has the all-time high annual merchandise exports. Now, this is a slightly controversial thing which they themselves have done. Which are the products which are most exported from India? ये problem है. You see in your revision document also. In the appendices, they have mentioned machine goods. In the document, they have written petroleum goods. Economic survey के साथ, the facts, they have attached in a statistical appendix. In that appendix, you can check for yourself also. They have attached and they have given that machine goods. इसीलिए वो जो table बना है इसमें, they are mentioning machine goods first. You check in the table, they are mentioning machine goods because वो appendix में वो है. But survey ने document में ये लिखा है. In fact, they have created a whole graph also where they are shown the petroleum exports being 21.1%. ये statistical appendix की problem है, वहाँ पे I think it's a misprint. We will go with this. The highest number of exports from India are petroleum products. Second is gems and jewelry. Third is chemicals, and fourth is pharma. So the total 4 largest exports from India, it is petroleum, gems and jewelry, chemicals and pharma. We are going to go with this classification. Appendix में there might be a misprint. क्योंकि वो एक 0 या 5 कुछ आगे पीछे लग गया वहाँ पे. This is the largest. In fact, they have drawn a whole graph also. So the export performance, 5 largest exports is this. In terms of agriculture, which is the largest export? Which is the largest export? Wheat. Wheat to top 5 में भी नहीं है wheat. See, rice, when we combine both basmati and non-basmati, then rice is the highest export India does. But if we combine only one category of rice, that is basmati, then the highest is the second one, that is marine products. Fish highest है अगर rice की दोनों classification लो. Rice की one only classification you take, so rice is the highest exports from India. Second is marine products. What is the third largest? This is what has changed in the last 1 year. Earlier, the third largest was your spices. This has been now in the last year replaced by sugar. In the last 3 years, the increase in sugar exports, this is the third largest exported item. So last 1 year ka agriculture exports, maximum is rice, when you combine both basmati and non-basmati, marine products, fisheries, sugar and spices. Is it clear? This is agriculture, this is your total exports from India. And the fifth is your meat products, bovine related. वो थोड़ा पीछे होता जा रहा है. That used to be very high. Buffalo meat. That is the fifth largest. Why is it funny? Nobody laughed at rice. Now, the 3 things or the 4 things which they have said has improved in the last year, where we have seen significant improvement. One is pharma exports. The other is electronic goods, engineering goods and chemicals. ये चारों area में India has witnessed positive growth in the last 1 year. Significant increase in pharma exports from India, exports of electronic, engineering goods and organic and inorganic chemicals. These are the 4 items where we have witnessed a very significant increase. Now, they've also given reasons for increase in pharma exports because other countries are piling up on medical sources, inventories, and also there's a demand for vaccines. This is why exports from India has been increasing, especially pharma. This they have talked about in a context where the supply for this pharma has been restricted, but still the exports have been positive. Due to the supply side disruptions, supply side kam hai, pharma mein problems hai, still we have witnessed positive growth. So all 4 sectors have witnessed positive growth in the past 1 year. Next, what are the destinations for these? Or first, imports. Significant revival in imports. Imports is also significantly increasing because of the increasing demand. These are the highest imports which we are doing. The highest being the crude oil, petroleum, oil and lubricants. यही export भी highest है, ये import भी highest है. Import because we are doing imports of crude. Then electronic goods, coal, coke and briquettes, machinery, electrical goods, organic and inorganic chemicals. So these are your 5 largest imports which we are doing in the country. We discussed exports. See, you can have a question on arrange the following in the ascending or descending order based on what we are doing, export or import, the 5 largest. Now destination or first trade balance negative hai. This is your quarter-wise trade balance they have given. This is consistently declining. Trade last quarter was minus 74.6. India has a significant balance, trade imbalance where, and trade imbalance, whenever we talk about trade balance, we are only talking about goods. Trade balance doesn't include invisibles. Trade balance only includes visibles, that is goods. Imports minus exports of merchandise, not services. The top export destinations in the last 1 year: US, UAE, Netherlands and China. This is important. Netherlands has replaced China last year. Earlier it was third was China, now it is Netherlands. So the top 4 export destinations are US, UAE, Netherlands and China. Also, it talks about diversification. India has increased the percentage of its exports in 3 different countries. Significant improvement. One is South Africa, the other is Brazil and Saudi Arabia. So top 4 are your US, UAE, Netherlands and China. Diversification have happened in South Africa, Brazil and Saudi Arabia, where the percentage of exports has increased. With respect to imports, China is the leader, UAE, US, Russia and Saudi Arabia. These are the 5 import destinations from where we import. The sources of import: China, UAE, US, Russia, and Saudi Arabia. Export, diversification, and from where we are importing the different 5 countries. Share 40% of the total imports. They've also mentioned that in the last 1 year, the imports from China have reduced, but it still is the largest. And in terms of services, there we have a huge surplus, and the surplus being in 2, that is software and business services. This is the largest service exports from India, that is software and business service, which account for more than 60% of the total services export. In terms of export, software and business services are the largest services which we are exporting. What are the various software exports? In terms of retail and consumer business, communication, media, healthcare, banking services. Business services में engineering and research and development. This is the primary 2 areas where we are exporting our services. Software and business services. This is significantly increasing in India year on year. Service imports also rose last year by 25.1%. Increase is mainly because of the payments of transport service. We discussed there is a problem in global freight because of the lack of containers. Transport service की cost increase हो रही है. Travel and other business services. What are travel imports? Tourism. How? When your residents are going abroad for holidays, that is travel import. Travel export is when people are visiting your country. So transport service, more of travel and other business service. People are now not visiting the states in India, they're going outside. Sabko Bangkok jana hai. Hey, this is a significant travel, this is a travel import. It is going to become an Indian state very soon. No, Coke in principle is not Coca-Cola. यार तुम भी पूछ रहे हो क्वेश्चन यार. ये तो बताओ कैटेगरी ऑफ कोल होता है कोक. It's not Coca-Cola. So the performance of service trade, again important here is what exactly is your trend in the last year across the various sectors, exports and imports with respect to service trade. You can compare these 2 years, 20, 21 and 21, 22 across the various sectors. The highest export performance in India comes from the services sector, that is telecommunication, computer and information services. Then you have transport. Import is also transport and business services. This is your, just witness the trend. That's it. Then foreign trade policy. Every 5 years we have a foreign trade policy. Last foreign trade policy we have 2015 to 20. Because of the disruptions of pandemic, we continued it till 2022 and we extended now to 23 itself because of the various problems. See, the idea of foreign trade policy is the foreign trade policy tries to introduce a lot of schemes which are beneficial for trade in India. We'll discuss all of these schemes that have been mentioned in the document are part of the foreign trade policy 2020. Beyond this, they did not do because of the disruptions. So now everything has been extended. Last year, we had an achievement. We signed 2 free trade agreements, one with UAE and the other with Australia. What is the name of the agreement India signed with Australia? That is with UAE. CEPA is with UAE. Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. What is this? See why it is important. UPSC already has asked this question. India has signed Economic Comprehensive Trade Agreement with which country? Already this has been a question before. This has been signed by which country? In one of the years they asked BTIA is a trade agreement with which country? This is with EU. So name of these agreements are important. This was CEPA, that is Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. This is Economic Comprehensive Trade Agreement with Australia. So names are important here. Ye ECTA India signed recently with what? This could be a question. 4 country option mein. Another thing which they have mentioned categorically, that India has also prepared a export preparedness index for measuring the competitiveness of the exports across states. Export preparedness index has been prepared by whom? It has been prepared by Niti Aayog. The survey has completely explained the performance or the who has prepared and what exactly are the pillars. If 11 sub pillars भी उन्होंने footnote में लिखे हैं survey में. So this is an important index which can be asked. Pillars can be asked because already they have asked pillars of ease of doing business. So export preparedness index is Niti Aayog in partnership with Institute of Competitiveness. Structure 4 pillars: policy, ecosystem, export ecosystem and export performance. 11 sub pillars. ये थोड़ा मुश्किल है to remember, but still you need to have a look. This has been explained by the survey itself. Usually they don't explain any index or reports. They have given complete information about the index in the survey. 4 pillars given by Niti Aayog to rank the states on their performance or competitiveness on export preparedness. This is export preparedness index. This is one thing which they have introduced in the last 1 year, that is international trade settlement in rupees. Now this is something which is very important. इसका concept का question भी आएगा कि what is the benefit of this, and you can also be asked a question how it will be done. How it will be done? Vostro and Nostro accounts. Is this the first time that we have Vostro and Nostro accounts? Normal trading होती है Vostro Nostro accounts में भी. Now what is special right now is that we have introduced rupee Vostro accounts. So international trade settlement, first what exactly is happening? You will have invoicing of exports and imports in rupees. That is, now your bills for exports and exports will not be in dollars. You have an option to have bills in rupees. You will have the exchange that will happen. So now when the foreign country is going to take out the rupee, you are going to have market determined exchange rates. Why this is important? That RBI determined exchange rate पे नहीं होगा. ये exporters के लिए important है that if they are getting rupee and if they want to convert it into another currency, whether it will happen at RBI rate or this. It is not RBI rate. In fact, India does not have RBI rate. We have only one market demand exchange, market determined, and special settlement through Vostro accounts. Now what are Vostro accounts? Ours and yours. This is ours or yours? Yours. This is yours. हम साथ साथ हैं. This is India, and say there is another country, Pakistan. By chance IPL में खेलने आ गया कोई तो पैसे देना. So what will happen if there is a trade happening here? We are importing goods and we are exporting good. Now for payment of these imports or exports, the bank in India, say SBI Bank, and there is a bank Y here. Now this bank Y will open a account in so the bank is not opening a branch here, the bank is opening an account in Indian Bank. This bank account in the SBI Bank, this is called as Vostro account. Yours. Your account in our bank. So now if exporter in India makes an export in the other country, whatever payment he is going to receive in his SBI Bank in rupees. This is a rupees Vostro account. He will receive the payment in rupees from this account. So for example, he's made an export to a company A here. Company A यहाँ पैसे देगी, इस bank account में से you will get the money here. This is how Nostro and Vostro account operate. You are going to have receive the money in your own country because that bank has opened a branch in your bank branch here. Your Indian bank mein someone else has opened an account, and similarly if you have to, someone has to make an import payment, they are going to make an import payment in rupees. So rupees mein import payment yahan dalenge, they are going to withdraw here. When SBI opens a account of this, it is called Vostro, and when in the bank Y, SBI opens its account, this is called as the Nostro account. So transactions or settlement can happen in Nostro and Vostro accounts, and this is a rupee Vostro account where exporter will receive the money in rupees, importer will pay in rupees. So now when the importer will pay in rupees, account of bank Y, they will be giving the income amount, account में credit हो जाएगी value, whoever has given the imports वो यहाँ से withdraw कर ले. This is how Nostro and Vostro accounts operate. Special rupee Vostro accounts have been opened up to facilitate this transaction. Is this clear? What exactly is happening? Working तो नहीं important है, but you should know what is Nostro and Vostro. Now, what are the benefits of rupee Vostro account? What is the benefit of, in fact, not rupee Vostro account, but international settlement in rupee? First, dollar demand is going to fall. One is first. Again, you can have a question on this. What is the implications? 1, 2, 3, 4. Pick out the right option. So first, dollar demand will increase. Now, if you don't need dollar, what exactly is the other benefit you're going to get? Rupee का तो internationalization is last. वो तो अगर international rupee settlement है, that is very easy to follow. Now, when you have demand of the dollar is going to reduce, one thing that is not going to happen is that you won't have volatility because आपका trade अब इसमें है. तो अगर कहीं बाहर की कोई भी volatile situation होती है, it will not impact you or it will impact you less because you don't have a lot of dollars. And why it is happening? Because if you are not transaction in rupee, what is the benefit? And same is the benefit which you get from a masala bond. Same thing is happening here. Masala bond is when you issue a bond outside but borrow in. Masala bond is a rupee denominated bond and here the trade is happening in rupee. So both things are happening in rupees itself. So the biggest thing, the benefit is that you don't have to do any sort of hedging because you don't have any currency risk. Because now your movement in currency will not impact you. We started the class with one thing, that the problem with tightening of rupee is, or tightening of the monetary policy in US is, that the external commercial borrowing the pressure has increased. Because people have borrowed from outside in dollars. If they borrow in rupees, and now if the Fed increases the interest rate, they will have no impact. Now if the Fed increases the interest rate and you have dealings in rupees, this is not going to impact your country. So you have mitigated the currency risk. Same in masala bond, currency risk. Now in both these relations, the currency risk lies with whom? The second partner in the trade who's trading from outside, a currency risk of uska hai, not ours, because we are dealing in our domestic currency. So you'll have lesser demand for dollar, you have lesser volatility, and you will have lesser currency risk is less, so volatility will be less. You won't require hedging. You understand what is hedging? Hedging is when you cover for your domestic outside borrowings by investing in dollar instruments. ये cover है आपका to protect from any volatile movements. ये नहीं करनी पड़ेगी अगर रुपी में है. Is this clear? The benefit of international settlement and how it is happening. Vostro Nostro account and invoicing also in rupees, and the benefits of international lending in rupees. What will be the drawback तो नहीं है, but problem है कि how successful we will be in doing this. इसका drawback ये हो सकता है when internationalization happens too much and people start holding rupees. When the people see what will happen here, if international, mostly it is rupee has turned international, you could have a problem that people are now holding rupees. Assets हो जाएंगे rupees में उनके. So our monetary policy impact will be severely curtailed. क्योंकि आपके पास रुपये अब आपके पास ही नहीं है, बाहर भी हैं. A lot of speculative attacks on your rupee can happen. In fact, this was recently we were happening in, there was a term contract that is called as non-deliverable forwards. एक ये capital market instrument है, non-deliverable forwards. इससे people were buying currency outside in India, outside speculative attack on rupee. Non-deliverable forwards में था कि it was a deal between dollar and rupee. कि आपने वैल्यू पे कुछ रुपी आज खरीदे एंड देन यू आर ट्राइंग टू स्पेक्यूलेट के वैल्यू होगा क्या इन द फ्यूचर. व्हाट हैपेंड हियर एंड व्हाई इट इज नॉट डिलीवरेबल? बिकॉज दोनों की वैल्यू का डिफरेंस ही उन बंदे को मिलता है, करेंसी एक्सचेंज नहीं होती. बट यू आर इम्पैक्टिंग और हैविंग अ अटैक ऑन रुपी. तो द मोमेंट इंटरनेशनलाइजेशन हैपन्स, यू कैन हैव अ प्रॉब्लम दैट अदर पीपल आर होल्डिंग रुपी एंड योर मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी कैन बिकम इनइफेक्टिव. दिस इज हाउ इंटरनेशनलाइजेशन ऑफ रुपी कैन हैव अ ड्रॉबैक. उसमें यूएस ऐसे कंट्रोल कर लेता है. हाउ डू यू थिंक यूएस हैज एबल टू मेंटेन दिस डॉलर गिवन टू एवरीवन? यूएस हैज मेंटेन्ड सिग्निफिकेंट करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट फॉर मेनी years and they've supplied dollar to the world. A lot of other countries are holding dollar assets in US. Now this is a volatility for US. But problem is ये volatility तब बनेगी जब कोई और currency reserve आके वर्ल्ड में आती है. वो तब प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगा यूएस के लिए. अभी बिकॉज इन नो इट हैज डोमिनेंस, इट विल नॉट बी अ प्रॉब्लम. एक्सपोर्ट्स वो तो फिर करेंसी का मूवमेंट, इफ योर वैल्यू बिकम्स वेरी नॉट जस्ट डोमेस्टिक, वो तो फिर कन्वर्ट करोगे उसमें ही प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगी. Now there are different government schemes. Now all of these government schemes which have been mentioned here are done by Ministry of Commerce. You just need to know what are the objectives here of the scheme or what are the features. Now interest equalization scheme, this was introduced in 2015. All of these were part of your foreign trade policy 15 to 20. इनको extend किया है आगे because we did not have a new foreign trade policy. Now interest equalization scheme, we are giving what? We are giving an interest subvention to exporters. That is, exporters can borrow money from banks. We are going to give them interest subvention. For example, if the cost of the loan is 8%, we are giving a 3% subvention to them, that is buy at 5%. So what is happening in interest equalization? We are giving an interest subvention to the exporters. And most of the sectors that have been covered here are labor intensive and employment generating sectors. This is interest equalization scheme where we have reduced the interest for the exporters. This subvention is paid by the government. Government RBI को देता है, RBI फिर बैंक से settle करता है. This is interest equalization scheme where interest rates being charged to by the in both pre and post shipment are being reduced. Credit सस्ता मिलेगा to exporters. One thing which they have done in interest equalization scheme, earlier the interest equalization scheme में 5% का subvention मिलता था, अब 3% कर दिया है. Earlier 5% subvention we were getting, so in the previous form of the scheme 8% का loan आपको 3% में मिलता, अब 5 में मिलेगा. 3% has been reduced from 5 to 3, and for some specific exports 2 भी कर दिया है. This is interest equalization scheme run by the Ministry of Commerce through RBI, where you are getting a interest subvention on the loans. This is a scheme for exporters. Prelims mein they can ask you features. You can use this scheme in mains while writing answers. What is the government efforts in increasing export? So one of the schemes is interest equalization. No, not Exim Bank. Government देगी सीधा, और banks के through जो ले रहे हैं, government will give the money to RBI, RBI will adjust it with the banks. This is a very famous scheme, remission of duties and trade, remission of duties and taxes on exported products. What happens in this scheme? A very famous scheme. What is this? In fact, this scheme was, the earlier scheme was manufacturing exports from India. ये WTO compliant नहीं थी, इसलिए we brought out remission of duties and taxes from this. See, what is the idea of this scheme? There is a manufacturer in India who is doing export. Within the whole life cycle of the export, this manufacturer would have paid a range of taxes and duties. The idea of this remission of duties is, and this is WTO compliant, that whenever you export, you should not export the taxes and duties. तो अगर उसने एक प्रोडक्ट बनाया 100 रुपीज का, उसके ऊपर टैक्स लग के द प्रोडक्ट वेंट 120 रुपीज. सो नाउ दिस 120 रुपीज प्रोडक्ट इज गोइंग इनटू द आउटसाइड मार्केट. दिस पॉलिसी सेज only the product should be exported, not the taxes. So we are going to return this 20 rupees to the exporter. This happens under remission of duties and taxes on export products. So whatever you are exporting, the government is going to give back the duty to you. And this money which the government is giving, this money is not in the form of that the government will transfer the money back to you. The government will issue you a duty scrip. एक स्क्रिप्ट देगी गवर्नमेंट, दैट इज यू कैन से जस्ट अ सर्टिफिकेट, दैट इलेक्ट्रॉनिक होगा ये, दैट वी ओ 20 रुपीज टू यू. And this script is what the exporters can use wherever he has to make a payment of tax. अपने उसने कंट्री में टैक्स देना है. मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स व्हाट वी कवर हियर इज ही वुड हैव इंपोर्टेड सर्टेन आइटम्स. Imported items पे he would have paid custom duty and other small state taxes whatever he has paid. वो जो उनको पेमेंट करनी है वो स्क्रिप्ट के साथ वो एडजस्ट कर ले. एंड इफ ही इज नॉट एडजस्टिंग इट विद द स्क्रिप्ट, हो सकता है पेमेंट नहीं हो उसकी टैक्स की, ही कैन सेल दिस स्क्रिप्ट इन द मार्केट एट अ प्रीमियम. ये एक ट्रेडेबल स्क्रिप्ट है कि मेरे को सरकार से 20 रुपए लेने हैं, किसी और को सरकार के साथ एडजस्ट करने हैं, आई कैन सेल यू दिस स्क्रिप्ट. Only to exporters. Only to exporters, because exporter को ही taxes duties का वापस देना है हमें. This is why, no, not export duties. Any duty which you have paid in the country, be it central government, state government, local taxes, कोई भी tax exporter ने भरा है अपनी country में, वो हम आपको वापस दिलवाएंगे. This is the idea. Export duty is a separate thing altogether. वो तो government ले ही रही है, वो that is the exporter has to deposit to them. तो वो वहाँ पे script के साथ adjust करा देते हैं. This is the idea of remission of duties and trade and taxes on exported products. Is this clear how this will operate? A script will be issued. Script आपकी जो payment taxes है उससे adjust कर सकते हो. नहीं करना, you can sell it. And this script will be issued by Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs in an IT environment. ये एक digital script होगा. It is not physical. Given by CBIC. And this scheme has been made operational from 1st January 21. 15 से 20 ये scheme चली थी. Manufacturing exports from India. It was also, this was one of the features there also. Is this clear? Remission of duties and trade taxes? Applicable to few, there are few exceptions here where it is not applicable. You can just go through it. Fact hai. Where it is not applicable. Then there is export credit guarantee. Export credit guarantee is given by a corporation which is Export Credit Guarantee Corporation. This is 100% owned by government. ये 3 function करता है export credit guarantee. 1, it is providing insurance to exporter कि अगर आपको पेमेंट नहीं मिली बाहर से, we are going to provide you insurance. आपके लोन पे इंश्योरेंस हमारा है. So 1, it covers the exporters, providing them from payment risk. The exporter has taken a loan from a bank, and if he doesn't get a payment from his consignment, this the export credit guarantee can cover you. So 3 things it is doing. 1, it is covering the exporters. 2nd, it covers the banks. Banks might have given loans to exporters, and what if this exporter fails? Now this can create a problem that banks will stop giving money to exporters. 1, we are covering exporters अगर उनको payment risk नहीं मिला. 2nd, we are going to cover the banks. What if the exporter fail? So we are going to provide a credit guarantee to banks. And the 3rd activity does. So 2 activities is what they have explained in the survey itself. 1 is export credit guarantee to exporters, and 2nd to banks. Banks में ही एक special scheme लाया है जहाँ पे थोड़ा coverage ज़्यादा है. Another 3rd thing which it does is also a function of ECGC is it does export factoring. See, a lot of times what they do is कोई भी corporation उठा के they talk about the corporation in detail in the paper. So 3 functions I'm telling you. 1, एक तो ये 100% owned by government है, and 2nd, the functions 1 to exporters, 2nd to banks, and 3rd to export factoring. So they can have a question: export credit guarantee covers who all? Does what all functions? Now what exactly is the idea of factoring? What happens in factoring? If production, this is not factors of production. इतनी ज़्यादा innovation. In fact, for MSMEs, we have a factoring platform also. Trade receivable discounting. This is factoring. Person A has made a sale to a company B. The company B has not paid but issued. The invoice is not paid here. Right? This could happen in any of the business. You can have a one company dealing with other and they're not paying. Now what if this company A in between requires money? This could be a possibility. This invoice can be used for raising funds. This person A can use the invoice and go to the bank and get a on this invoice. This process is called as factoring. ये है factor. जो भी ये service देगा उसको बोलते हैं हम factor. Whoever invoices, whoever takes the invoice on a discount, gives this loan is called as a factor. This is called as factoring service where you can use the invoice to get credit. This is factoring. So when we are talking about export factoring, that means ये bank नहीं ये ECGC can also provide you this function. So if you are an exporter who has not got his payment, you can take a loan from the ECGC on this. And this loan is being repaid by the person who has issued the invoice. जो जिसने payment नहीं की, ये repayment करेगा. क्योंकि इनवॉइस तो इसी से आना था. इनवॉइस, प्रीमियम, नो इंटरेस्ट, ये दोनों डिसाइड कर सकते हैं कौन पे करे. बिकॉज समटाइम्स ही माइट बी अ सप्लायर के कोई नहीं हम इंटरेस्ट दे देंगे, यू जस्ट पे द इनवॉइस. दे कैन डिसाइड अमंगस्ट ईच अदर. बट दिस इज द आइडिया ऑफ फैक्टर. दिस इज अ बिजनेस. एनबीएफसीज करते हैं बैंक्स की जगह. देयर आर अ लॉट ऑफ एनबीएफसी ऑल्सो विच आर इन्वॉल्व हियर. एनबीएफसीज फैक्टर्स बोलते हैं उनको. दिस इज द फंक्शन दे डू. दे गिव मनी ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ इनवॉइसेस. So 3 functions your ECGC is doing. The credit guarantee, one is they are giving guarantee to the exporters in case of payment risk. Second, they are covering banks. And third, they can also do export factoring. So you can have a question कि it gives a guarantee or can it give loans also. So factoring के अंदर वो भी provide कर सकता है. These are the 3 functions of Export Credit Guarantee Corporation, which is 100% owned by the government. Further, there is Krishi Udan scheme. This is with respect to assisting farmers in transporting agriculture products both internationally and nationally. Again, features of the scheme are important. Krishi Udan में freight का support मिल रहा है through airports, international and national both. In Krishi Udan 2, we have focused on 2 areas. One is hilly and tribal and northeastern states. So transporting of farmer produce through airports or through airlines is your Krishi Udan scheme. Point 2.0 mein we are covering hilly areas, northeastern and tribal areas. The benefit here is that Airport Authority of India जो काफी सारे charges लेती है, it is going to waive off. This is the benefit of Krishi Udan scheme. There are a lot of charges which it takes. They are going to waive off that charges. Transportation both internationally and nationally. This is Krishi Udan. Then there is Trade Infrastructure for Export Scheme, TIES. Under this, there is a grant which is provided to central or state agencies to establish trade infrastructure. There are a range of projects which have been listed under the scheme where you will be given money, grant coming from the center to the central or state agencies. For normal projects, it gives a grant up to 50% of the equity of the project. In certain special cases, it can advance 80% of the equity also. So the government is going to give money to central and state agencies to construct trade infrastructure. This is Trade Infrastructure for Export Scheme. ये projects हैं जो बना सकते हो. हाँ, PPP भी cover होगा. In public-private partnership also you will be given because one of the partners is government. Then district and export hubs. This is part of your one district, one product. The facilities provided is branding, promoting and marketing. So the district as export hub, the marketing and branding support will be provided for exports. This is agriculture district as exports hub. So these 4 schemes have been mentioned in your survey. Any feature of this scheme can be asked in the exam. All of these are being done through Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Then next is your global trade agreements. The global trade agreements, they've talked about free trade agreements and regional trade agreements. Both of them are allowed under WTO. WTO is what? Is your multilateral trade agreement. Multilateral agreement, that means it is on all members. Free trade agreement is mostly between 2 countries, and this is between regional होनी चाहिए वो countries. Can regional trade agreements involve countries who are geographically proximate to each other? Regional होना चाहिए. Is it necessary to be regional here under the regional trade agreement? Free trade agreement और regional trade agreement फर्क है, countries ज़्यादा हैं यहाँ. Free trade में कम है. Should the countries be sharing borders or should be they in a same regional space? Same region जरूरी नहीं है. The name might suggest regional, but it is not. Only thing is multiple countries. And what happens in FTAs or RTAs? Customs. So we are trying to improve the trade relations by reducing the barriers. The whole idea of a free trade agreement or a regional trade agreement is we want to increase the trade between the partners by reducing the barriers, both your, what types of barriers? Tariff barriers and non-tariff. Negotiations can be very broad. And if the, see earlier the previous free trade agreements, most of the negotiations happened on goods. Now when you expand the FTAs to include matters of services, to include matters of investment, to include matters of say data, जहां भी आपका enlargement of FTA है, these are called as, in Indian context, the comprehensive economic partnership and the comprehensive economic, C is cooperation. CISA and CIPA are enlarged FTAs where the matters being dealt are more than goods. This is why you see India UAE is a comprehensive economic partnership agreement. FTA enlarged are these agreements in context of India. Now what is the rationale for free trade agreements? It provides an opportunity to diversify and expand. It provides a level playing field with the competing countries having preferential access. So if someone else is signing a free trade agreement, uske saath aapko level playing field mil jayega, you also sign a free trade agreement. Plus easier access to raw material and intermediate goods, some of the benefits of more trade. India has concluded so far 13 FTAs and 6 preferential trade agreements. What is the difference between FTAs and PTAs? What is positive and negative list? So the difference between the two is that preferential trade agreements will select the number of goods on which you will have waive off of duty. Duty कम होगी, वहां हम goods select करेंगे. It will be a small positive list on which we are going to negotiate. The negotiation is going to happen on a select range of goods. That is a preferential trade agreement. But if we are covering all goods, comprehensive coverage, it is a free trade agreement. If we want to remove some goods, we will have a negative list. तो यहाँ पे कुछ गुड्स हटाते हैं, यहाँ पे कुछ गुड्स लेते हैं. This is the first form of economic engagement with some other country. The first form is preferential trade agreement. The second is free trade. We start with the range of goods. We can enlarge a PTA to a FTA where we cover most of the goods, highlighting few negative items. Is this clear, the difference between the two? India has 13 free trade agreements and 6 preferential trade agreements. Recently, we have signed India UAE comprehensive economic partnership. This is why this is comprehensive, because it has much more matters than negotiations on goods. ये enlarged है, we have all different items there also. Economic cooperation and trade agreements. This is India-Australia. So this term is important. Economic cooperation and trade agreement, India signed with which country? In fact, first we signed an early harvest agreement. What is early harvest? पहले ही ऑस्ट्रेलिया के साथ अर्ली हार्वेस्ट था. नाउ वी हैव द फुल वन. Step by step process. Whenever a negotiation on a free trade agreement is started, it will take a lot of time because you have to discuss good by good or services by services. क्या होना चाहिए, कितना duty reduction, कैसे. This can take a lot of time to negotiate. In the meanwhile, on a certain select goods, we can start the FTA. This is called as early harvest. जब तक negotiation conclude होंगी on a select few goods, we can start the free trade agreement. This is called as an early harvest agreement. So Australia के साथ पहले early harvest था, now it is a full economic cooperation and trade agreement. So two latest signed, India UAE and India Australia. What are the pending negotiations which India has on right now? European Union, United Kingdom and Gulf Cooperation Council. Right now under negotiation. There are 3 under negotiation. One is UK, the other is Canada and EU. There are 3 right now under negotiation for free trade agreement. One with UK, other with EU and other is India, Canada, CIPA, जिसमें early progress trade agreement है. EPTA, early progress trade agreement. This is similar to an early harvest. Early progress is similar to early harvest. Now, see, one thing which was earlier happening, that your free trade agreements were already allowed between two countries, member countries of WTO. Now there are a lot of regional trade agreements that are coming throughout the globe. Now, why we have more FTAs and RTAs? What is the reason for more FTAs and RTAs being signed now? The problem is that WTO is now not slow, it is stagnant. No new multilateral agreements are being brought under WTO because of the conflict between the developing world and the developed world. There are a range of matters which they want to include under WTO, which the developing world is not letting them do. For example, arrangement on labor, environment matters, and also data sharing. These new matters are being tried to push in the WTO, which the developing world is not allowing. Apart from the previous issues जो हैं वो peace clause and everything, that is still ongoing. ये new issues पे भी अभी लड़ाई है. In fact, this data sharing was something the developing world was trying to push through their own agreement under Osaka Track. Osaka Track में they had developed certain negotiations on data sharing which they were trying to push through the WTO, which is not, because India, China along with other countries, G33, this is not working. That is why more FTAs and RTAs. Few of the RTAs that have been mentioned in the document itself are these. One is the Pacific Alliance between the South American countries, Chile, Colombia, Mexico and Peru. All of these can be asked in the exam. Different alliances, किस countries में? One is Pacific Alliance. The other is a tripartite agreement between 3 regions in Africa. This is your Trans-Pacific Partnership Comprehensive Progress. This is between US and the other trading partners. Then African Continental Free Trade Area and RCEP. These are the latest regional trade agreements. The Pacific Alliance, the Tripartite Agreement, the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, African Free Trade Area, and Regional Comprehensive Partnership Agreement, the RCEP. All of these have been mentioned there in the survey. You should have an idea. Prelims mein these can be asked. WTO is anyways a very favorite topic. This has already been asked. इस FTA का नाम है BTIA. The purpose, the benefit of the FTA: lower tariffs, more cooperation, increasing trade. See, one thing which they have covered in detail. Do you think FTA automatically leads to improve in growth in trade? Why this topic has been discussed in detail? In India, we have not been able to utilize the FTAs to our own benefit. Most of the free trade agreements, the 13 free trade agreements India has signed, most of the benefits have been achieved by the other countries. This is why India is also under the review of various FTAs. India has signed a FTA with ASEAN. This is right now under review because what India has realized, we are not getting the benefits of these FTAs. Other countries are getting more benefits. This is why this thing has been discussed in the survey, that FTA directly does not lead to growth in trade and does not lead to directly growth in GDP. There are a range of factors that have to be improved, then only free trade agreement is going to function. So it has highlighted 4 major factors. 1, it has said what exactly are the specific features of the FTA. This will determine whether growth will happen or not. कहाँ पे remission मिला है, कब से start हो रहा है, क्या rules of origin है. Rules of origin is what it has highlighted again and again. This is a significant problem. What is rules of origin? At least 30%. What's the problem of rules of origin? See, the problem in FTA is that if India has signed a free trade agreement with Sri Lanka, so products coming from Sri Lanka will get a duty preference because of the free trade agreement. But what if a lot of Sri Lanka imports a lot of goods from China and then they are routed under here because of the free trade agreement? This is why you need a certificate of origin. Both countries assign certain special offices which will give certificate origin to the products so that imports from a third country do not flood the country. These are very difficult to catch and also to first determine कि कितना percentage हम allow करेंगे, because श्रीलंका में सब कुछ नहीं बन सकता. It would be importing some things and therefore it would trade that with India. So certain percentage of imports should be allowed under rules of origin. These negotiations are which hamper most of the times. The Indian RCEP was also cancelled because of rules of origin. Because we could not come down to the last negotiation कि कितना percentage allow करेंगे. Rules of origin where third party imports could use the FTA for its benefit, not for these two countries' benefit. So what are the features of the FTA? Second, what exactly are the rules of origin? Another thing which it has highlighted is countries most of the times reduce their barriers in terms of tariff barriers. What they don't reduce is their non-tariff barriers. Now what are the non-tariff barriers? इस पे negotiation बहुत problem है. What are the different non-tariff barriers? One is sanitary and phytosanitary, that is any health norms for protecting its animal, human and plant health. You can have sanitary, phytosanitary measures. ये quality specifications हैं because they think imports from other countries might harm their own domestic animals, plant or human health. Sanitary and phytosanitary measures. This is a type of non-tariff barriers. What are other types of non-tariff barriers? Child labor. Labor अभी consideration में नहीं है. Human rights, see this is what I said. Labor, environment और ये सारी चीज हम चाह रहे हैं WTO की negotiations में आए. This is right now we are not negotiating with even other countries on this. Investment parameters UAE के साथ फिर भी किया है. Other parameters we are not discussing because problem है फिर हमें strengthen करने पड़ेंगे अपने. Strengthen नहीं हुए तो वो FTA का use नहीं है. This is why India is not negotiating because the strengthening of all these violations or all these regulations is going to impose a significant cost on India. Be it labor laws, be it your environmental laws. These two are major problems और उससे cost एकदम से बढ़ेगी. We will not be able to increase imports. इसीलिए India negotiate इन पे कर ही नहीं रहा है कहीं पे भी. Both labor and environment. This is the problem in WTO itself because these new areas the developed countries wants to add. क्योंकि उनके यहाँ पे तो already they are using good standards. Other are your technical parameters. Technical specifications could also be one of the reasons for non-tariff barriers. So FTA क्या features हैं? FTA में फिर उसके बाद non-tariff barriers कितने हैं? Because all of these non-tariff barriers are highly subjective. So your trade might not increase even after FTA because आपने tariff barriers तो हटा दिए हैं, but you might have a lot of non-tariff barriers. So this is what is said. FTA signing का ये मतलब नहीं है कि growth होगा trade का. You can have a problem in the design of the FTA. This is why, in fact, India, Singapore, SEPA is also under consideration. India is trying to negotiate or India is trying to review and is going to change those features because we are not getting benefits of FTA. 2020 Economic Survey did one whole chapter on this, that India is not getting benefits of its free trade agreements. Tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers. The other third reason it has talked about is these are the external factors. Then there are internal factors also. That do we have the capacity to increase the supply? Your free trade agreement means you are getting duty concessions. If you have duty concessions, क्या आपके exporter के पास capacity है कि अपनी supply बढ़ाए? There is a lot of domestic factors which we need for increasing the production. These are all internal matters. For example, what is the physical infrastructure? What is the institutional infrastructure? Without this, production increase नहीं होगा. So if you have a question, do you think FTA can directly lead to increase in growth of trade? It is no. There are a range of factors that act. First, the specific features of FTA. Second, what exactly are the rules of origin and the non-trade barriers? Because rules of origin में सबसे ज़्यादा cheating होती है. It's very difficult to ascertain के product आया कहाँ से है. Third is your domestic factors and fourth is your international factors. Again, what is the situation, economic situation of the other country? क्या वो आपके product will they be able to buy or not? You are supplying, do the people have income to buy those products or not? So if you're signed with UAE and UAE ka the population is limited, they are already importing goods from a lot of countries. Now do they have the income for Indian goods or not? So the FTA increasing the growth, increasing both in trade and growth is very conditional upon these four factors. Whether your domestic country can produce more, whether the importing country can accept more, whether they have the income growth or not. So if we have with Sri Lanka का economic situation is bad, your free trade agreement is not going to give you any benefit. क्योंकि वहाँ लोगों के पास पैसे नहीं हैं आपके imports के लिए. So FTA's relation with growth is highly conditional. These 4 factors are going to come into play. This is with respect to your regional agreements. Next is your balance of payment. Balance of payment has 2 accounts, current account and capital account. Now 2 things here. One is your trade in I'm not giving the complete classification. What is important here we will discuss. Now these are the 3 accounts or the 3 heads where movement has happened in the last year. The trade in goods in India, we have seen a negative performance here. It is negative movement, that all the more deepening current account deficit because of the trade in goods. Imports have increased. The reason being, one is the increase in oil prices. This has been the performance in trade in goods. So merchandise trade, that is the trade imbalance, has seen a very negative performance. Trade in services, this is a positive. Investment income, this last year was negative. So 2 negatives which have caused current account deficit to go up to 3%, more than 3%, is one, trade in goods is negative and investment income is negative. The 2 positives that have been remittances. India is the largest receiver of remittances in the world. So remittances pe we have received a plus, that is the transfers, negative on trade and goods and investment income, and cumulatively we have a deficit on the current account in the range of 3%. So survey talks about how we have a merchandise trade deficit negative because of the higher import bill and because of the monetary tightening, a lot of adverse situations outside. Trade in services has been a strength, positive. Investment income, what is investment income? Whatever money in terms of profit, we have assets abroad, what they are earning income, वो assets included capital account में होता है, their income is included here. And remittances, that are unilateral transfers that are coming from rest of the world. This is positive. More people are outside, less people are non-residents staying in inside, so remittances are positive. Cumulatively we have a deficit. These 2 plus are not significant to cover for these 2 negatives. On top of it, on capital account also, what we have seen is, on capital account, that is foreign direct investment and foreign, we have seen a दोनों चीजों में outflow हुआ है last year में. Both foreign institutional investment and foreign direct investment, we have seen an outflow. This investment is capital account, investment income is current account. So capital account investments, both of the sectors, we have seen a significant outflow. ज़्यादा significant ये है, lesser FDI, but both have been outflow from the last year. This is your performance on the balance of payment. Another thing in the capital account is your foreign exchange reserves. This also we'll see. This is also we have seen contraction. पूरा एक segment they have devoted to foreign exchange reserves and their adequacy. How much of foreign exchange reserves are enough? So these are all negative. Foreign exchange reserves have also reduced. Same thing, current account balance. Figures not very important. This quarter saw 4.4% of current account balance negative because of higher merchandise trade deficit and net investment outflow. So 2 negatives, investment and trade. 3.3% on the back of increase in the merchandise trade. Ye last one half of 2022. This is your current account balance as a percentage of GDP. It is consistently. You can see quarter 1 and quarter 2 से negative और ज़्यादा बढ़ रहा है. It's consistently increasing because of the merchandise trade imbalance we have. You can see the positive and the negatives here. The merchandise trade balance is all negative. Your net services are all positive. Net transfers are positives. Net income is negative. So positives are merchant service and transfers. Negatives are income and merchandise. Across the years, India is following a consistent pattern. Investment income पे और trade balance पे. Please remember trade balance सिर्फ और सिर्फ merchandise का trade include करता है, not of services. This is only the visibles, not the invisibles. This is composition of the net invisibles, that is services, transfers and income. Services transfers being positive, income being negative. These are your invisible. Visible are your goods. So remittances, second largest major source of external financing after service export. So largest is service export, second is remittances. So on the current account, if you want to balance the deficit, we have service first, second is remittance. Another thing which the survey reports is, now most of the remittances are being shifted from low skilled areas to higher skilled activities. This is a gradual structural shift we are seeing, that destination from low skilled informal employment in Gulf, we are seeing high skilled jobs in high income countries such as US, UK, East Asia, East Asian countries. So a structural shift from informal employment from GCC to developed world. This is why remittances, India is the largest receiver in the world, because high income countries में high skilled work is what we are creating. Then on terms of capital account balance is also has reduced from the previous. It is still positive, but it has reduced. In one quarter, only capital account balance was negative. Otherwise, capital account balance has always been positive in India, but it has reduced since the previous years because of the outflow of investments from India, both foreign institutional and foreign direct investments outflow we are seeing. Now the different sources, one is your banking capital. What is included under banking capital? What is the most prominent source in banking capital in capital account? And this is what has increased in the recent years. What is banking capital under capital account? Paid up capital. कैसे हो सकता है वो? We are talking about, what is BOP? What is BOP? Transactions between India and the world. The transactions which are business like are current, and transactions which alter the asset liability structure, that is capital. How can you have paid up capital in banking capital? वो कहाँ आएगा? Investment में आएगा वो. Even if you say paid up capital, FDI क्या होता है? हाँ? Investment in equity. This is paid up capital. This is why survey is important. Survey is not important for facts. Survey is important for revising the economics के आता है कुछ समझ, because question यही आना है. Question नहीं आना के facts क्या है. If you see the previous year papers, they are not asking about the facts. They are only checking your basic knowledge कि अगर Fed ने tightening करी monetary policy की तो क्या होगा. We have discussed in the whole chapter, उसी के implications हैं ये सब. You just need to understand the concepts कि वो debt capital क्या है, equity capital क्या है. Simple चीजें. Classification of terms and their relation amongst each other is what is asked in paper. What is this? Net banking capital. What you are saying is external commercial borrowing is net loans. Commercial borrowings is loans. Net foreign investment, the foreign institutional investment, foreign direct. What is banking capital in current capital account? Yes, you have NRI deposits. NRI deposits are doing in the banks in India, becoming a liability here, altering your asset liability structure. This is part of your capital account. In fact, this is one of the most important source of dollars for India. यही reverse हो गए थे 91 में. NRI deposits happen in 3 accounts in India. What are the accounts? NRI accounts. There are 3 types of accounts which the NRIs are offered in India. FCNR, foreign currency non-resident account. B, what? Non-resident account. This is what is offered in India to the NRIs. Special accounts होते हैं उनके banks में. Foreign currency, non-resident account, category B. Similarly, you have and NRO. There is one more, FRERA. In fact, A is not there. B, NRO and FRERA. These are the three accounts where NRI gets money. NRI deposits which are part of your net banking capital. This is capital account. So net other capital mostly coming from outside, loans, foreign investment, grants and everything. This is your foreign investments used to be positive. Inki positive in one quarter, you can see it has turned negative because of the outflow that is happening, both institutional and direct. Net banking capital, you'll always see significant. Last quarter, even that was negative. So these are your components of capital account balance. FDI inflows reduced from the previous year, 42.5 billion say it has come to 39, reduction in FDI. Computer, software and hardware is where the maximum FDI came in India, followed by services and then in trading. The three sectors which received the maximum FDI last year, computer, software and hardware, services and trading. And which are the countries from where it comes? Singapore, Mauritius, and third is, why Singapore and Mauritius? Tax evasion. It's not evasion. Evasion is illegal. Tax avoidance because of the double taxation avoidance agreement. Evasion is illegal, avoidance is legal. You use the legal mechanism. DTA की वजह से ही सिंगापुर और मॉरिशस से मैक्सिमम आते हैं. Third is US. UAE, sorry. UAE and US. UAE तो अब हर जगह है. Import, export everywhere. This is your net foreign direct investment. The trend 2020-21 to you can see 21 से 22 में ही काफी reduction हो गया है. Quarter 2 में also the figures are reducing. Reduction in the foreign direct investment coming in India. FPI is also recording an outflow. FPIs in India come in both instruments, that is equity and the other is debt. ये कम है. Major FPI comes in is foreign institutional investment or foreign portfolio investment allowed in government security. Is foreign portfolio investment allowed in government security? Yes or no? Foreign institutional investment in government security. This is one of the most significant part of your external debt. This is external. This is sovereign external debt of India. Government securities investment by FPI. In fact, there are three different routes created for FPI and foreign government securities. One is your medium term framework, where how much you can invest, till what time you can invest, all the parameters are given under medium term framework. The second is voluntary retention route. This was started in 2019-20. Under the voluntary retention route, there were certain relaxations given to foreign portfolio investment if they invest for the longer duration. These are three routes through which foreign portfolio investment can do in government securities. Medium term framework mein the limitations and the timelines have been given. Voluntary retention route mein there have been certain relaxations on investments if you invest for longer duration. And the third route is, which was introduced last year in the budget, it is called as the fully accessible route. Under fully accessible route, you can invest. There are certain government securities where foreign portfolio investments can invest without any limitation. कुछ एक securities हमने बताई हैं जहां पे they can invest without any limitation. So the foreign portfolio investments in government securities comes under three routes. This is the normal route, that is called as the medium term framework. The second is voluntary retention route. Here, if you invest for the longer duration in government securities, you are given certain relaxations. This is voluntary retention route. And the third is fully accessible route, where in certain government securities you can invest without any limitation. FDI trade, they would give certain trade finance in form of investments in equity and debt. FDI में they are going to set up certain service. जो normal FDI और FPI का difference होता है. वहाँ पे इक्विटी, बट आई विल हैव मोर शेयर. एफडीआई और एफआई में 10% से ज्यादा शेयर होगा तो मेरे पास कंट्रोलिंग शेयर आएगा, कुछ वोटिंग मिलेगी. आई कैन डिसाइड हाउ एग्जैक्टली ट्रेड एक्टिविटी विल हैपन. इफ इट इज लेस देन 10%, आई एम ओनली इंटरेस्टेड इन द स्टॉक मार्केट गेन्स. FDI in. So I am establishing a trading company who can trade in India. I am establishing a trading company who is trading in India, and if I am doing FDI or FII, इसमें मैं इसका security या equity या debt में invest कर रहा हूँ up to 10%. Here I am only for profit for the shorter duration. Here I am establishing this service industry or trade industry. मैं trading एक player हूँ यहाँ पर इंडिया में जो trade करता है, selling and buying goods, retail, wholesale दोनों. ये मैं trading एक service यहाँ लगाऊंगा, अपने plant लगाऊंगा. I'll start a firm. This is FDI. Is it clear? Foreign institutional investment in government security, 3 routes. This is classified as the external debt. Sovereign debt, we'll talk about that also. So out of this, you can understand most of the foreign institutional investment comes in equity, not in debt. Even this can be a statement in prelims. Foreign institutional investors invest in India in which of the instruments? Debt or equity? More investment. It is happening more in equity, less in debt instruments. Foreign exchange reserves. Foreign exchange reserves have reduced in India in the last 1 year. What is the reason for reduction in foreign exchange reserves? What is the reason for foreign exchange reserves? What is the reason? Federal belt tightening. What is the Fed has increased the interest rate? Then we have seen outflow. So to control for this volatility, RBI has supplied dollars in the Indian economy. The supply of dollars means liquidating its foreign exchange reserves. Any other reasons for reduction? So currency की value कम हो गई, so maintain करने के लिए supply कर दी dollar. That's it. There are dollar की depreciation में two reasons. One is outflow, the other is oil prices, जिसकी वजह से we have seen depreciation. To control for this volatility, which has happened too much, we are RBI supplying dollars. This is one of the reasons. What's the second major reason for reduction in foreign exchange reserves? Supply side तो कर दिया. What is the other reason? Valuation effect. What is the valuation effect? Foreign exchange reserves are held in what? What type? How are we holding foreign exchange reserves? Dollar. One is foreign currency assets, then SDR, whatever SDR has been given from IMF is foreign exchange reserves, then gold. What else? The fourth is reserve tranche position. What is reserve tranche position? ये last year पूछा है शायद. Reserve tranche position. What do you mean by reserve tranche? 25% in where? We have deposited certain money in the IMF which we can use without any conditionalities. That is called as reserve tranche. Certain money deposited with the IMF which we can use without any conditionalities. This is reserve tranche position which is part of India's foreign exchange. Now what exactly is valuation problem here? किस चीज की value कम हो रही है? Other currency. So what is the? ये 4 form में है. तो अब मेरा कौन सी value कम हो रही है? These foreign currency assets are being deposited in what? Are held in what form? Dollars what? Foreign currency assets in dollar, but what asset? Are we holding the currency? We are holding foreign securities in that amount because these foreign securities can earn us small amount of interest. ये foreign currency assets ये नहीं है, currency रखी है. We have invested that money in foreign securities. What else have we done? Is this how we are holding all of the foreign currency assets? Some part of the foreign currency asset has been kept in the form of deposits with other central banks. And other central banks also, Bureau of International Standards, BIS, BESL, and also deposits with commercial banks. This is how we are holding foreign exchange. Foreign currency assets we are holding very less in the amount of the foreign currency assets themselves. Currency कम hold की है, ज़्यादातर पैसे securities में है, deposits में है. This is why valuation effect. So if I am holding certain foreign securities, These foreign securities, most of them are denominated in dollar. If my currency is going to depreciate, what is going to happen here to dollar? Dollar is appreciating, so my currency should be appreciated. So what interest rate? What bond price? Because if the interest rates in the outside world, that is US, is increasing, we discussed the first thing, interest rates in US are increasing, what happens to the yield on government securities, US government securities? This means the bond price, that means my foreign securities held in dollar, valuation is less. So two reasons for falling foreign exchange reserves. One, that RBI has supplied dollar to control the volatility because of the high depreciation. Second, valuation, because whatever assets we were holding in foreign securities in dollars, since the yield on the securities, that is US securities, has increased, their bond prices have fallen. तो मेरे इन्वेस्टमेंट का प्राइस कम हो जाएगा because of the valuation of these securities will reduce. So these two are the major reasons for fall in this, where we have supplied for outflows and valuation losses. Is it clear? Valuation losses? We are holding foreign exchange not in terms of currency but in securities. Maximum securities में है, deposits में कम है, but we hold it in deposits also. Now foreign exchange reserves is still very high. How much is enough? This is the foreign exchange reserves in India, 562 covering 9.3. We have the 6th largest foreign exchange reserves. A small piece of information ये भी पूछी जा सकती है. India has the 2nd largest, 3rd largest. We have the, why this is important, UPSC one day asked कि PPP terms में India की economy कितनी बड़ी है, 3rd largest, 4th largest, what? So they can ask this also, how much of the foreign exchange reserves. India has 6th largest foreign exchange reserves. Import cover roughly of 9 months. Now how much of is first, why do we require foreign exchange reserves? What is the requirement? Why do we need reserves? One, because we want to cover for, we want to maintain an exchange rate, manage exchange rate volatility. Manage कैसे करोगे जब आपके पास reserves होंगे? What else? Mostly that you show confidence that you can absorb any amount of shocks. Consider the current account deficit India has is roughly 3.2. Why this is problematic? This means why 3.4% of current account deficit is problematic? What is the problem due to this high current account deficit? Outflow. You have to make regular payments. Negative है, that means imports or any investment income, you have to make regular payments to the outside world. Do you have dollar to pay for these regular payments? This is why you have the confidence कि अगर नहीं है तो हमारे पास enough dollar है economy में, reserves में भी और capital भी surplus है. The idea is not we don't have money, the idea is कि dollar की availability है कि नहीं है. Same thing is happening right now in Pakistan, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. They have shortage of dollar in the economy. And this is a consistent pressure that you need to pay periodically on imports. आपको imports की payment देनी है. This is why you see that Sri Lanka defaulted on its payments. Default तभी होगा जब ये regular payments नहीं दे पाओगे. जब loan लिया है, what exactly are the regular payments you have to make? What is the regular payments India has to make? दो जगह negative है इंडिया में जो देने हैं पैसे. एक, and the other is interest on the debt you have taken. ये है डिफॉल्ट के अगर दोनों पे पेमेंट नहीं दे पाए. इंटरेस्ट इज ऑल्सो वी आर नॉट एबल टू पे. दिस इज वेयर यू गो बैंकरप्ट बिकॉज सप्लाई ऑफ डॉलर नहीं है, तो वो फॉरेन एक्सचेंज रिजर्व से आती है विच इज पार्ट ऑफ योर कैपिटल अकाउंट. फॉरेन एक्सचेंज रिजर्व्स ऑफ द सेंट्रल बैंक आर पार्ट ऑफ द कैपिटल अकाउंट. दिस इज मेंटेन लिक्विडिटी एंड ऑल्सो फॉर द कस्टमर के डेट रोल ओवर क्राइसिस नहीं होगा, हमेशा हम कुछ ना कुछ डॉलर आपको देते रहेंगे. सो द होल आइडिया इज दिस. देन हाउ मच इज इनफ? How we know that how much is enough? And is there any cost attached to holding foreign exchange reserves? What is the cost attached? Is there a cost for holding foreign exchange reserves? This is why we'll talk about whether they are enough or not. अगर आपको कॉन्फिडेंस ही देनी है तो वो अब कैसे पता चलेगा? $300 बिलियन में है, 900 में है और 3000 में है. China has more than $2,000 billion as reserves. So how do you know where is the confidence? import cover. Even if you are covering import cover, then is there any cost attached to holding of foreign exchange reserves? What is the cost? What is the opportunity cost? Can you invest dollars in the economy? You'll have to convert it into rupee. And what will happen if you convert into rupee? फिर कैसे यूज करोगे? फिर opportunity cost कैसे है? Is there a opportunity cost involved in holding foreign exchange reserves? International trade. What international trade? One thing is you are holding the foreign exchange reserves. You are taking a decision that you have bought enough dollars. You are holding as dollars. RBI has taken a decision of holding dollars because you want to control or you want to provide confidence. Opportunity cost simple है कि मेरे पास एक set of money है, मैं दो जगह लगा सकता हूँ. एक मैं उसमें I am selling dollars and selling rupees and buying dollars to maintain foreign exchange reserves. What is the other thing I can do? This very same money can be used to pay my debts in rupee itself. मेरी sovereign debt कम हो सकती है, इसी रुपी को यूज कर रहा हूं जो मैं डॉलर को कन्वर्ट कर रहा हूं. And what I'm earning on this? What is the earning I am doing in the foreign exchange reserves? The interest I am earning on the security. Is it significant? The earning which I am doing is very less. But if I could use the debt, the interest I am paying on the debt here, this is RBI के पास rupee है. Either it can buy dollars and save, have foreign exchange reserves, or it can repay the debt in the government. The debt has certain interest rate, and your foreign exchange reserve is earning you interest rate. इन दोनों interest rate का difference मेरी opportunity cost है. Is it making sense? Opportunity cost, I have a decision. I can do only one thing at one time. So either I can sell the rupee and buy dollars to maintain confidence of people. The earning on foreign exchange reserve is less. So the interest that I earn on these minus the interest I have on the debt. This is my opportunity cost. This is why we talk about how much should be enough, because holding of foreign exchange reserves is having an opportunity cost. The opportunity cost is the difference between your domestic interest rate and foreign interest rate. Is it clear? Why we are talking about enough? Because holding of foreign exchange reserves has an opportunity cost, which is the difference between domestic interest rate and foreign interest rate. In fact, you can see another opportunity cost involved in holding foreign exchange reserves. Again, I'm holding foreign exchange reserves. I'm not using them. The same dollar, whatever I'm holding, one is I'm investing in foreign security. What is the other investment I can do of the foreign exchange reserves? What? Gold. Gold में तो there is absolutely no earning. वो तो फिर appreciation की आप सोचो के हो सकता है. The same foreign exchange reserve I cannot use in my domestic economy, but can I use this for getting imports of certain, say, research and development or medicines which are important for my economy? मैं जो use कर रहा हूँ security में, मैं वो यहाँ भी use कर सकता हूँ. I cannot use it in my domestic economy, but I can use it outside. So both ways, holding of foreign exchange reserves has a significant opportunity cost. I am not using. In fact, what the other countries do, a lot of other countries have sovereign funds. वो अपना foreign exchange reserve dilute करते हैं. For example, if they have 500 billions, they will use 200 billions for buying machinery outside, for buying certain other capital goods from outside. Imports करते हैं वो mostly of capital goods to bring research. उसके लिए they create a sovereign wealth fund so that they can use the foreign. तो वो $300 तो हो जाएंगे, but हमें 500 रखने भी क्यों हैं? So this is also an opportunity cost. Is it clear what is the opportunity cost involved in holding foreign exchange reserves? One is your difference in the interest rate in domestic and difference of foreign. क्योंकि मेरी earning कम है, यहाँ मैं ज़्यादा दे रहा हूँ, तो मैं क्यों इतने hold कर रहा हूँ जबकि earning ही नहीं है? And second, I can use that somewhere. What is the other cost involved in foreign exchange reserves? Is there any other problem in holding more foreign exchange reserves? One is the opportunity cost. What else? Huh? Exchange rate. Why are we are using anything जो exchange rate होगा? You are holding most of your foreign exchange reserves in what? Foreign securities? The returns are increasing or reducing? You are holding an asset whose returns are diminishing over the time. Why they will always diminish over a time? Why they will never be very significant? ये टाइम के साथ कम ही होंगे, बढ़ेंगे नहीं. क्यों? We are investing in foreign securities of which country? Do you think yield on the foreign or yield will ever fall or bond prices here will increase or interest will increase of a developed economy? The growth of a developed economy, the potential is very less. So my returns are always going to be less any point of time because वो already developed economy है. This is why my returns are mostly diminishing. So there are two reasons of exchange rate why we should hold certain less, because it involves a cost in holding them and they are subject to cost. It is clear, two types of opportunity cost. One, we are not investing them somewhere else in the form of imports, and second, we are having because we are not solving debt. Difference between domestic and foreign borrowing rates is what my opportunity cost is, and loss due to the value reduction in the exchange currency. Is it clear? What are the two opportunity costs involved and why it is diminishing returns? So how much is enough? There are two major rules. One is you should have an import cover of, that means itna hona chahiye 3 mahine tak aa jaye. Right now we have 9 months. The other is Guidotti Greenspan rule. This means we should have enough foreign exchange reserves to cover for our short-term borrowings. Whatever short-term borrowings you have, your foreign exchange reserves should be in 1:1 ratio. This is your second. These are largely followed in the world. ये कोई दिया नहीं है किसी organization में कि इतना ही रखना है. So two broad parameters which countries use. One is your import cover and the other is the Greenspan rule, which says you should have enough foreign exchange reserves to cover for your short-term debt. Short-term debt is something which is less than 1 year. Maturity period less than 1 year. ये दो largely followed rule हैं. This is what the survey also has talked about. In fact, the survey has gone one step ahead. He said, एक कोई rule नहीं. You can have multiple indicators to decide how much is enough because you are involving a significant cost. This as they have discussed in a whole box. How much is enough? Because the cost involved is significant. You have opportunity cost and you have diminishing returns. UPSC has already asked this question in prelims. What is import cover? This has not been touched. Short-term borrowings. Is this clear? Foreign exchange reserves, how we are holding valuation loss, opportunity cost, why we have to hold or why we are not holding more. India mein we don't have any sovereign fund which invests these foreign exchange reserves outside. The other is movement in exchange rate. Movement in exchange rate. Last year India's currency has depreciated. Why has India's currency depreciated? Both supply side and demand side it has reduced. What has happened on the demand side? Demand side we have increase in imports. Import bill agar India ka बढ़ गया है, that means India has to pay more dollars. That means the demand for dollar is high. Demand for dollar, the curve will shift upwards, downwards. Downward. Demand कम होगी या ज़्यादा हो रही है demand? एंड सप्लाई ये डाउनवर्ड है. हाँ, लाइन के हिसाब से कोई नहीं, पेपर में बताना. मेरा क्या जाएगा? नो प्रॉफिट नो लॉस. मुझे तो पता है कि कहाँ जा रहा है. मेरा कब बन चुका है. ऊपर नीचे सब. सप्लाई इज बीइंग रिड्यूस्ड बाय वी हैव आउटफ्लो. सप्लाई इज रिड्यूस्ड. नाउ द कर्व. This is the depreciation. This is dollar to rupee and this is quantity of dollar, right? 70 to 80. This is depreciation because demand has increased because of import. Supply has gone because of outflow. What they have tried to explain कि not only rupee has depreciated, this has appreciated across range of currencies, and this is why he has given the definition of the US dollar index also. Dollar index is a measure of value of US dollar with respect of foreign currencies. Euro, Swiss franc, Japanese yen, Canadian dollar, British pound and Swedish krona. When we try to measure the value of one currency across 6 or more more currencies, not 6 just. This is called as your effective exchange rate. Effective exchange rate US का बड़ा है, they have seen appreciation. This is, and the range of currencies are this. Even this can be asked in prelims. US dollar index में कौन सी currencies हैं? Indian rupee is not part of the dollar index, and dollar index में the dollar has strengthened. It has also given figures on nominal exchange rate, which has increased, and also the real exchange rate. I hope this concept is clear. Nominal effective exchange rate. Nominal effective exchange rate. When we try to measure the value of the currency with respect to dollar to rupee क्या है? This is called as the nominal exchange rate. When you measure the value of one currency across to other, it is called as nominal exchange rate. But if I want to measure across many currencies, not just one, but many currencies at the same time, this is called as nominal effective exchange rate. RBI uses this formula where rupee to dollar, this is 1. They also assign a weight. What is the weight? Depends on the trade coefficient between the two, exports minus imports. This is what is used as a weight. Rupee to dollar, rupee to different currencies. We calculate for 6 currencies and basket of 36 currencies. This is your nominal effective exchange rate. Since it is rupee to dollar, if the value of NIR is going to increase, is it appreciation, depreciation? Rupee to dollar है, तो अगर value increase हो रही है, if the value goes more than 100, it is appreciation. Last year they asked this question. Normally हम बात करते हैं dollar to rupee terms में, तो अगर value increase होती है वो depreciation होती है. RBI जो use करता है NIR का formula, they use rupee to other currency. This is why increase in value is appreciation. The same thing when we adjust with prices. This becomes real effective exchange rate, where rupee to dollar into price in India, price in the weight is same trade. Similarly, other countries added. This is the concept of NIR and RIR. Both have appreciated in India. Sorry, depreciated. It is appreciated. Sorry, nominal effective exchange rate strong हुआ है rupee to dollar, while NIR of 64 economies it has depreciated. Anyways, movement is not that important. Next is international investment position. What do you understand by international investment position? Again, the definition itself is important. Movements are not significant. Movement India, net international investment position India ka is negative. See, this is somewhat like the balance of payment but different. Why? We are trying to compare what residents assets they have outside and what liabilities they have. The financial assets of residents that are claim on non-residents and the reserve assets. Assets में सिर्फ और सिर्फ financial assets नहीं होंगे. You can also have reserve assets. Liabilities of residents to non-residents. The adjustment of asset and liability is your net international investment position. The whole country, whatever asset it is holding outside and whatever liability it has. Asset में, it is not just the assets of your government, assets of your normal institutions, it is also the assets of your RBI. Reserve assets भी include होते हैं. So assets are financial assets plus reserve assets. Liabilities are total liabilities. Liabilities में आपके पास reserve assets नहीं होगा. So the adjustment of these two is called as your net international investment position. The cumulative net international investment position determines whether we are a creditor, we have given money to outside, or we are a India would be what? India is a negative, it's a debtor. So my asset and liability outside is my net investment, international investment position. My assets outside were less, 847 were reduced by 73 billion last year because of the reduction in my foreign exchange reserves. So this is my assets are reducing. Also, overseas direct investment and trade credit had an increase. Overseas direct investment is FDI, from India. We talk about foreign direct investment, that is investments coming in India. Overseas direct investment is the FDI which we do in other countries. Foreign direct investments from India in other countries. The trade credit which we give and the ODI, that is your overseas direct investment, ये दो positive है. Reserve assets saw a negative. This is why assets were reduced. International liabilities, this was also negative because of the variation in exchange rate vis-a-vis the other currency and outflow. ये कम हुए हैं liabilities. Liabilities have also reduced, not increased, reduced because of the outflow. If I am outflow, my liability will reduce. So this is the international investment position. Movements again are not important, the definition. This is the India's net international investment position. All negative. As a percentage of GDP, minus 11.5. And the asset to liability ratio last quarter was 68.5. This is asset to liability ratio in percentage. Net position is negative. Important thing only is कि asset में सिर्फ हमारी country के residents के assets, government के assets नहीं, you have asset of RBI also. This is very important. ये बहुत बार miss हो जाता है कि ये assets हैं कि नहीं है. Minus the liabilities we have, which we owe. External debt. External debt as a ratio to GDP fell to 19.2. External debt, long term and short term. India has most what? Long term or short term? This is roughly 78 to 79%. Short term is only 20 to 22%. Most of the money which we owe are long term instruments, not short term. Short term is less than 1 year, and majority of the short term debt we have is in the form of trade credit. What is trade credit? And trade credit in terms of short term debt क्या होगा? This is a loan taken for paying for imports. Trade credit is dealing for import and export. So whatever loan we have taken to pay for imports, this is the majority part of our short-term debt. More than 97% is short-term debt. Long-term debt reduced in India from 82% to 78%. Short-term debt in total debt went up 21% from 17%. You just need to have a broad idea. Short-term ज़्यादा है, long-term नहीं. You can have a broader statement कि कौन सी debt ज़्यादा है इंडिया में, short-term और long-term. Why? In terms because interest would be less, but this could be short term because need is eminent, इसलिए लिया है short term. इसलिए इंडिया की short term बहुत कम है. This is why we say most of the times, even after having a very significant current account deficit, India is safe because India में debt is long term, not short term. तो अगर हमें liability अगर देनी भी है तो वो short term ही देनी है. तो वो बहुत कम है. 20% of the total debt is only short term, and a percentage of GDP it is roughly 19 to 20. Major denominated, UPSC has already asked this question. The debt is denominated in what currency? Dollar के बाद, second, rupee. So maximum is dollar, second is rupees. याद भी है 27. इतनी सारी स्लाइड हो गई हैं. US dollar denominated, second is rupee. Now sovereign external debt. What is sovereign external debt? What comprises sovereign external debt? Government debt. What are the components? And from where do we borrow mostly? Institutions कौन से? Sovereign external debt comprises of what all? There are two types. One is multilateral and bilateral. Multilateral, India takes maximum debt from which country? Maximum India has taken from what institution? Multilateral. And bilateral also India has taken from which institution? Which country? Multilateral, World Bank. Which agency of World Bank? World Bank is the answer. Maximum we have taken from IDA. Second we have taken from IBRD. Bank for Reconstruction Development. Third, जस्ट टू हैव अ ब्रॉड आइडिया. मल्टीलेटरल सबसे मैक्सिमम लिया आईडीए. बायलेटरल डेट सबसे ज्यादा कहां से? बायलेटरल डेट, बायलेटरल डेट मैक्सिमम इज फ्रॉम सेकंड. एनी रफ आइडिया? Third is Russia. These are the three countries from where maximum bilateral debt in India has come: Japan, Germany, and Russia. Multilateral this. Is this the only sovereign external debt? Do we have sovereign external debt in other forms also? मसाला बॉन्ड, वो तो डिनोमिनेशन हो सकती है, वो तो कहीं भी इशू कर सकते हैं. इनसे भी लिया है, इनको भी इशू कर सकते हैं बॉन्ड्स. दैट इज अ टाइप, इट्स अ टाइप ऑफ इंस्ट्रूमेंट. मल्टीलेटरल, बायलेटरल, आर वी टेकिंग फ्रॉम अदर सोर्सेज? फॉरेन इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टमेंट अभी बताया, इन्वेस्टमेंट इन, दिस इज एक्सटर्नल डेट. फॉरेन इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टमेंट्स in government security along with whatever borrowings we have in SGR, IMF. Maximum bilateral, multilateral and foreign institutional and government sex, these are your sovereign external debt. Government debt outside. This is sovereign external debt part of public debt? It is part of public debt. Public debt is both external and internal. What is the idea of public debt and how is it different from normal government debt? सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट लाइबिलिटी और पब्लिक डेट में क्या फर्क है? सेंट्रल, दैट इज जनरल गवर्नमेंट डेट. Central, state and everything is general government debt. What is the difference between central government debt and public debt? And why are we including this under public debt? Huh? नहीं, public debt is internal and external. External का एक component है sovereign. What is then central government debt? Central government liabilities or central government debt. The idea of public debt is contracted on the consolidated fund of India. Central government debt includes both consolidated fund and the public account liabilities. Small savings funds, NSSF से borrowings होती हैं, वो यहाँ include होती हैं या नहीं. Public debt is the debt on consolidated fund of India, which is internal and external. Central government debt includes both this plus national small saving funds जो हम public account पे liability है हमारी. And general government debt is debt of all government, center plus state plus local self government. Everything is a general government debt. These are the three difference: public debt, central government debt, and general government debt. इसमें external में sovereign external debt is this. Non-sovereign external debt, we have two major areas: deposit taking corporations and non-financial corporations, which account for maximum of these non-sovereign external debt. One more ratio I have to tell you here, but kahan likhe? There's, see, you can go through the table here. There's a table given with respect to all debt. Wahan pe one of the ratios is the debt service. What is debt service ratio? External debt का ही component है. External debt में one of the parameters. Normally, what would be the debt service for a company? This is for external debt in India, debt service ratio. This is how much of the principal and interest we have on the total debt of the country upon what are my receipts on the current account. This is your debt service ratio. Current account में कितनी receipts हैं which can be used to service my principal and interest. This is to check how much volatile or how much coverage you have of the debt, whether you have enough current receipts. Current receipts, which would be the maximum current receipts we achieve. अगर मेरे को principal और interest pay करना है अपनी debt पे, तो मैं किससे पे करूँगा? कौन से? What would be my current earning, current receipts? Export of service plus remittance. We just now discussed these are the two large current receipts we have. Service exports is my current receipt. The earnings I have to cover for my debt. Debt को मेरे को service करना है. This is debt service ratio. How much of current receipts I have to pay for my principal and interest, the debt I have. This is the debt service ratio. This is what they have explained in. This won't work. So we have only one diagram left. ये chart ही नहीं खुल रहा है. So this is your external debt across sectors. इसका trend is important. What exactly is being happening to the external debt in India as a ratio of GDP increasing then decrease simultaneously. कोई एक specific trend नहीं है. This is your debt service ratio. How much money you are earning to pay for your debt. This is debt service. Why this is important? Last to last year they had asked a ratio which was your interest coverage ratio. Interest coverage ratio is the same debt service ratio. It's earnings. It's the opposite. Earnings कितनी है as a percentage of interest payments you have to make. Debt service उल्टा है. Debt service is how much principal and interest I have to pay as a percentage of my earnings on the current account. My current receipts, which are this. This was asked, two statement question was asked. One was this, other was if it is increasing or decreasing, it is good or bad. Same thing can be asked for debt service ratio. Debt service ratio is principal interest as a percentage of current receipts. Then the ratio of foreign exchange reserves to total debt. India has significantly high foreign exchange reserves to total debt. Coverage is significant. पूरी डेट एक बार में फॉरेन एक्सचेंज रिजर्व से 100% ऑल्सो वी कैन कवर. 98-96 इज व्हाट इज द कवरेज. एक क्वार्टर में कम है बिकॉज फॉरेन एक्सचेंज रिजर्व्स आर फॉलिंग. अदरवाइज वी हैव सिग्निफिकेंट कवरेज फॉरेन एक्सचेंज रिजर्व्स टू टोटल डेट. एज दिस इज शॉर्ट टर्म debt, roughly around 20%, not significant in India. The same thing has been explained through another graph. This is with other countries, the debt ratios. This is short-term debt as a percentage of total debt, 19%. The green one is the total external debt, 20% as a percentage of GDP. This is foreign exchange coverage, 97%. This is your external outlook. They have said the same thing, that since the global demand is weak and the growth might be stagnant, if the size of the pie is not increasing, we have to increase our share by destination diversification and product. Two diversifications we have to do this. Another thing which they have done, and how can we do that? We have to focus on तभी export demand India से बढ़ेगी. And another thing which they have done is they have compared whether we are going to use our FTAs or not. This will depend on what the external environment is and again what we are doing here. Because a lot of competition from India is being taken away to, and it clearly mentions कि textile में तो बांग्लादेश के पास है, वियतनाम और ज़्यादा भी engineering goods and other goods it is diversifying. So the competition outside is stiff. But what exactly is the benefit India has? And this is what they have talked about. India has a benefit over these two countries. Cheap labor both have. One is demographic dividend. We have young labor, skilled young labor. Skilled नहीं है इतना. What is the other thing? Skill is less, very less. तभी तो वियतनाम जा रहा है. Otherwise, such a small country, how could it compete with such a big giant? Market तो फिर external outlook में क्या आएगा? India has a benefit that India can achieve economies of scale. The length and breadth of the country, economies of scale, we can produce at a much larger scale than what Vietnam or Bangladesh is doing. They will have a problem. They will not be able to increase their scale. We can have both. Demography is favorable and economies of scale where we can beat the competition. This is how they end, but mostly on a negative end के growth नहीं बढ़ेगा तो India में export का it would be very less. Is it clear? This is with your external sector topic.